Well, hello. Welcome to Thursday Night Blather with the Blathering Boomer. Um, there's a lot to get to. There's more to get to than I thought. Wow. A story that I just found out about literally 10 minutes ago might literally trump everything else going on. Very, very worrisome situation. I know very little about it. First, let me talk about this. I got, where is it? Oops, wrong side of the nose. We got that. And we got that. And you lose half your audience if you say you voted for Trump or you say you voted for Biden or Harris, whatever. You lose half your audience if you say you support Israel. You lose half your audience if you say support Hamas. You lose half your audience in South Asia if you you lose 99% of your audience in South Asia if you say you support Pakistan. And a shout out to my 90% of my followers are in South Asia. And my apologies to you, really, really fine folks. I haven't forgotten about you, but there's a lot going on right here, a whole lot going on right here. I want to get to everything. I want to get to the kidnapping of Greta Thunberg. I want to get to the LA riots, obviously. I want to get to Simone Rile's faux apology. And I also want to get to, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with something really short.
Hypertension, weight gain, dry mouth, stuffy nose, sleepiness, and increases in liver enzymes have been observed. These are not all the side effects. Talk to your prescriber and learn more at fanapt.com.
I'm going to stay in the corner for this. Did you notice what I noticed? Because I recorded this about 5 days ago when there was so much less going on in the world than now, but I kept it in the story. Anyway, she says something really, really telling. I'm going to play the very end of that one more time, and let's hear it.
Talk to your prescriber and learn more at fanapt.com.
Talk to your prescriber. She doesn't say talk to your doctor. Talk to your prescriber. So that's what it's come to. That's what the medical profession in some cases has come to. Talk to your prescriber. Anyway, speaking of medicine, so God, I'm just all over the place tonight. I'm so sorry. You lose half your audience on this, you lose half your audience on that. People don't agree. People agree. I think there's actually one thing we can all agree on, and that is fuck cancer. What I have is mild. It's nothing. I might be a bit ugly when because they're gonna slice this side on July 3rd, and they did a biopsy on this side today, and apparently I got some kind. I don't know if I left my right anymore. I got some kind of issue. These are all basal carcinomas. They're no big deal. Biopsy's done today. Scraping happens July 3rd. Enough about me. Wow. So. This happened today, and
So I want to say thank you to every single person that has been able to do this.
Hands up.
Also, I want to talk
Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary, because the fact of the matter is, I have a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your.
I also want to talk about specifically.
Ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you let my hands go ahead, put them behind my back. All right.
Cool. Other hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
There's no recording loud out here.
So a United States senator was taken away in handcuffs today. Wow, there'll be plenty of people on the right saying, nobody's above the law, and he burst into a news conference unjustly, and other people will say he had a right to be heard, and all this and all that. And this is brand new news. I heard about that when I was driving to the doctor's office today for my biopsy. So, but then it gets even crazier. Oh my God, I'm not sure if anybody knows about this. I sure didn't. When I was looking for that story, and I went to the search engine on Twitter, and I typed P for Padilla, what I came up with was P, not for Padilla, but for this. This came up. So apparently Israel bombed Tehran. Preemptive strike. I know that's all I know. That's all I know. I came across that 10 minutes before going live, while I was looking for the Padilla footage. And I had this whole show prepared, and I still have it prepared. I guess I'll go through with the show. Wow, I remember, God, back in 2019, maybe very early 2020, I was covering an don't go to war with Iran demonstration in front of Trump Tower in Las Vegas. It looks like somebody's at war with Iran. I don't want to speculate, but that it sure looks like Israel bombed Tehran. And I guess I'll pause a moment for all the God help us, because really this could really it's already bad, and this could get unthinkable really, really quickly. So I just hope. Wow. I just, whatever it is, in the long run, all I've ever wanted is for the fewest people to be dying as possible. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like with this. Okay. Wow. Well, obviously I live in Southern California. Charles Brennan's trying to say something, but he didn't, he didn't finish his sentence. I guess he's hitting the return button before he's hitting all the letters. But I'll read it as soon as. Right now, all we have is Israel did but we'll see what else Charlie has to say. Charles, by the way, Charles is my old college roommate, really dear friend of mine. I've talked about him in the past. He's but anyway. Not to go into Charlie's medical issues, but he is one courageous motherfucker. The things he's been through in the last couple of years, all starting with jumping off an ambulance to try to save somebody who needed an ambulance, and his life's been hell. Anyway, he was going to come on the show tonight, but he had a bunch of physical therapy to do today, and he couldn't do it. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I got from Charlie, Israel did bomb Iran. Yeah, well, yeah. And again, I can't cover that any more than what I just said. If anybody wants to type in the comments further details, I will read them in real time, but that's about all I can really do. So now that I've been totally as if I wasn't distractible enough. So I kind of had a running order, and let's try to make some sense. I've been saying this for the last 4 or 5 days. I am in the market for a rational conversation about what's going on in Southern California, and apparently now in much of the rest of the country. So let's start with the what.
Here's what we know so far about how the chaos unraveled. June 6, Friday, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents were carrying out a series of immigration sweeps across Southern California. Reports of federal agents running after people in a parking lot of a Home Depot in Westlake started circulating. Around 3 p.m. local time, a crowd of dozens gathered in the Fashion District near downtown Los Angeles after ICE agents appeared at an apparel manufacturer there. Video shows what appears to be ICE agents loading at least 2 white, unmarked vehicles with people in handcuffs. Crowds gather around the vehicles. Some are seen even standing in front trying to stop the vehicle from going further. Later in the afternoon, hundreds of protesters gathered outside the Los Angeles Federal Building, calling for an end to immigration raids in the city. Footage shows protesters vandalizing the building and heckling law enforcement. Police with riot gear were seen confronting the protesters with batons and what appeared to be tear gas rifles. The Los Angeles Police Department posts on X saying there is an unlawful assembly in the area of Aliso Street in downtown LA and advises demonstrators and others to leave the area. The next day, around 10:15 a.m., the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department responded to reports of a large crowd gathering in Paramount, a small city about 20 miles south of downtown Los Angeles, amid false rumors of immigration agents planning a raid on a Home Depot in the area. Officers warned the protesters to disperse as intensity grew. Another protest occurred in Compton, with some protesters starting a series of vandalization, including setting a car on fire. Around 6 p.m., President Donald Trump signed a memo ordering 2,000 National Guard troops to LA. Protesters were seen throwing rocks, glass bottles, and fireworks at officers throughout the night as officers fired flashbang grenades and less lethal projectiles. Members of the California National Guard arrived in downtown Los Angeles shortly before 4 a.m. on June 8th. The deployment is the first time in decades that a state's National Guard had been activated without a request from its governor. 22 Democratic governors called Trump's deployment of the National Guard in California, quote, an alarming abuse of power. Protesters started marching in downtown Los Angeles, chanting and holding signs that read, "Fight Trump." The LAPD went on, quote, tactical alert, and the use of less lethal munitions has been authorized by police. With the LAPD and National Guard present on the scene, protesters walked on and halted traffic on a portion of the 101 freeway. Officials say 2 LAPD officers were injured by motorcyclists attempting to breach a skirmish line. Multiple police vehicles were seen damaged with shattered windows.
Yeah, JM is correct. That's not protesting. That is a riot. And I'll agree with Gavin Newsom about one thing. It was not Trump's place to call out the state National Guard. You know whose place it was? Gavin Newsom's. Gavin, if you want to know what happens when you have a riot, and this was a riot, and you don't call the National Guard, ask Tim Walz what happens in Minnesota, in 2020. He delayed 5 days before he finally called out the National Guard, and by then it was too late. I'm trying to present both sides of the issue, but once, again, it's like the John Lennon song, but when you talk about destruction, don't you know that you can count me out? That line got crossed. That line got crossed very, very early on. The line was crossed before the National Guard was called in, and it wasn't Gavin Newsom's right to call out the National Guard. It was his duty to call out the National Guard. And it was the National Guard's duty not to attack the protesters or the rioters or whatever. It was the National Guard's duty to protect innocent people, innocent businesses from what inevitably happened, which is all the looting, all the destruction. So, while I'm going to do my best to present both sides of the issue and why people were upset, etc., I cannot abide by the dude does not abide by violence, whether it happens on June 6th or January 6th. I'm against all of it. It's not how it works. And those of you who are sitting there, my some old friends north of the grapevine, I doubt any of you are still watching because for whatever reason, and maybe some of you who are a little more radical are thinking peaceful protest doesn't work. Well, talk to Gandhi, talk to Martin Luther King. You want to win people over, but there's more to it than this. I believe there's a lot more to it than this, because this does not appear to be organic. I'm going to come up with a couple of examples of just how inorganic this very well might be. Yeah, so there's a van that pulled up with a bunch. You can't really see it too well here, but that's a stack of pre-printed, very, very professionally made signs. So there's organization behind this. There's no question there's organization behind this. And let me get to something else, because I'm going to let the video kind of speak for itself, and then I'm going to comment on it. Here we go.
Today, there's mystery over this high-tech face masks being handed out from the back of a pickup truck and distributed to protesters. We got our hands on one. They're hard to find because they're in short supply. They're called the Bionic Shield, and they provide full protection for face and eyes, just what a rioter would want when going up against cops.
Anyway, a truck pulled up and unloaded those Bionic Shields. So a lot of people were wondering, where did the truck come from? And I believe we have the answer to that right here. Photo was surfaced of the man behind the wheel of a truck used to deliver and hand out tens of thousands of dollars worth of face shield masks to rioters in Los Angeles. He's reportedly affiliated with Local 399, a Southern California chapter of Teamsters for a Democratic Union. And there he is driving the truck. And there's a close-up of him. And we might be wondering a little more about this individual. I asked my old friend Grok I said, What do we know about the Teamster who delivered face shields to the rioters? And Grok replied, I'm not going to mention the guy's name. If you could see it, you could see it, whatever. The individual reportedly involved in delivering face shields to protesters in Los Angeles is blah, 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 who was arrested by the FBI on June 12th. That's today. The Blathering Boomer is bringing you breaking news. This has never happened before. This has never happened. Usually I'm just kind of fourth generation regurgitation of things I hear on YouTube. But today we got breaking news. This guy was arrested today. I did not know that. Well, I knew that when I found this, but yeah, arrested today in East LA. He was charged with conspiracy to commit civil disorders for allegedly distributing bionic shield face masks to suspected rioters during an immigration-related protest, some would say riot, on June 10th, 2025. The arrest was announced by U.S. Attorney, Bill Asaila, who shared a broadcast clip showing a man handing out gear for a pickup truck. And it goes on. The arrest sparked backlash from some local residents in East LA, reported being awakened by flashbangs and law enforcement activities during the FBI operation. One resident who knew the guy casually claimed to be unaware of any criminal activity on his part. The operation involved the National Guard assisting the FBI, and authorities have emphasized a focus on identifying and prosecuting those organizing or supporting civil disorder. By civil disorder, I'm assuming they mean violence. I have zero problem whatsoever with actual peaceful protest. I'm a big fan of the First Amendment, a very big fan of it. Hey, if not for the First Amendment, I wouldn't be blathering at you right now. I'd be back in prison, So, yeah. Well, anyway, so as the video that I showed shows, it all started. This incarnation of it started when ICE did a raid in downtown LA, and they were taking some people away. And some people are saying, well, these were criminals they were taking. Some people are saying these were grandmas. The truth is actually somewhere in between. I think it was some and some. I'm not sure that's even the point, but the point is that people, hey, on December 4th, 1975, I was taken from my home in handcuffs and thrown into a van and taken away. And there weren't a whole bunch of people out in the streets trying to stop the van. Now it didn't help that I was guilty. But nevertheless, you don't do that. They can't be out there throwing things at federal agents, albeit ICE agents. I know they're supposedly the bad guys in the eyes of a lot of people, but there are right ways and wrong ways to go about this. So when people attacked the ICE agents who were doing their job, agree or disagree with the job, they were doing their job. That escalated things to where the cops came in, and then the rock started throwing, and National Guard, and we end up where we are now. I'm told it's a little bit quieter today than it's been. I'm very lucky. I live in Southern California. I have a business in Southern California, and my partner, the love of my life, is half Mexican. A lot of people I work with are Mexican. This is not about white versus Mexican. This is about something very crazier and deeper. When I'm at work today, working alongside everybody I work with, no, there's not a word about any of this. And luckily, I'm about 35 miles away from downtown, so none of my my operation wasn't affected. Anyway, so what do I have next here? Okay, so one of the things I saw, and I don't have the clip, was one of the rioters or the peaceful protesters stood up on a car or grabbed a bullhorn and said something like, California belongs to Mexico. And that made me say, well, why is somebody saying California belongs to Mexico? Why would they say that? Now, I know that my partner's grandma, who I sadly never met, very feisty little abuelita, apparently. And when they talked to her about people coming and going from the country and getting in and out, she responded in her apparently inimitable style, we were here first and they drew the lines. Well, there's truth to that. But let's take a little bit of a dive into that, because the lines being redrawn have to do with something that happened way over 100 years ago. We're going back to 1848 and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that ended the Mexican-American War, previously known as just the Mexican War. So I'm going to, of course, I went to my old friend Grok. And so the question I asked Grok was, why did the USA give $15 million to Mexico at the end of the war in 1848? And the answer I got: the United States paid Mexico $15 million as part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, told you, signed on February 2nd, 1848 to end the Mexican-American War. This payment was essentially compensation for Mexico ceding about 55% of its territory, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, to the U.S. The treaty also recognized the Rio Grande as the border between Texas and Mexico. The U.S. offered the sum to formalize the transfer of land, avoid further conflict, and provide Mexico with funds to stabilize its economy, which had been weakened by the war. Some U.S. negotiators, like Nicholas Trist, saw it as a way to maintain diplomatic relationships and avoid perceptions of outright conquest, though Mexico had little choice but to accept due to its military defeat and internal instability. Let me repeat that last line. Mexico had little choice but to accept due to its military defeat and internal instability. This was some real gangster stuff, because apparently, before the war broke out, about a year before the war broke out, the United States sent an emissary to Mexico with a $25 million offer to buy pretty much the land that we just described. Mexico was huge. Mexico went all the way up to what is now the Oregon border. Texas was tiny. Texas, after it won its independence from Mexico, its borders were way, way far away from the Rio Grande. That was a disputed area. The area between Texas, the recognized border of Texas and the Rio Grande River, was disputed territory. And what sparked the Mexican-American War was the United States sent troops into the disputed land, and they were attacked by Mexican soldiers. Some Americans were killed. The war got back to Washington. Americans were just killed by Mexicans in Texas or disputed territories. The army came in. The war started, and the United States, the very, very much expansion under James Knox Polk, very, very expansive United States, took a couple of years. They invaded Mexico and basically brought Mexico to their knees. And the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the war. So do I have anything else to present? So it raises a question. When you own a house, you have the right to control who comes in and out of your house. But there was a property in Vermont called Earth People's Park, which was bought partly with some of the Woodstock money. It was in the early 70s. And it was a social experiment. And it was basically this piece of land belongs to the people of Earth. It was in northern Vermont. And anybody's welcome to come. And it was kind of basically an experiment in organized anarchy. It lasted some years. But eventually, it was overrun by drunks and drug dealers, and ended up being confiscated by the state. So that's an example of what can happen when you just have open borders. If I left my door open and made it known that anybody who wants to come in my house could come in my house would probably not be recognizable after a week. Those same people bought some property in Mendocino County. And I was actually part of that at one time. And they certainly had a right to control who came and went from the land. So the question is, does the United States, having spent $15 million or $600 million in today's equivalent dollars, does the United States have the right to say who can and can't be here? And if you think that the United States does have that right, then you're probably in favor of everything ICE is doing. And if you think the United States doesn't have that right, then you're probably on the side of the protesters / rioters. I got my own opinion. But again, I have a lot of respect for the people I work with and the people in my extended family, and I don't want to go too crazy about it at this moment. I just hope everybody would agree with me that the violence is wrong. The underlying stuff. Like I said when I started talking about this, I am very, very much in the market for a sane and rational debate about the immigration issue. So I invite anybody, no matter what their position on this is, to come on. And I'm not going to say necessarily go live with me, but we'll tape a segment. Not everybody's used to going live. I sure as hell wasn't. I'm still not. Going live is very, very. You get pretty nervous. I got 20 people watching. That's more than usual. So again, I'm under pressure to not suck. So yeah, if you have an opinion on this, no matter what the opinion is, I want to hear from you. And I'm very, very glad to tape a segment. And I won't even air it unless you approve of the edit. So here's and I actually want to share something that doesn't really paint this country in a great light. This is unsubstantiated. It's only one video, so I'm not sure how true it is, but I kind of believe it. And this is talking about the treaty that I'm talking about, and here we go.
President James Polk provoked war with Mexico. After a long and bloody battle, the U.S. occupied much of Mexico. The two countries decided to work up an agreement, and Mexico ceded half their country to the United States. This part is important. There was an agreement called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. It gave around 100,000 Mexican nationals living in those territories citizenship if they decided to stay. But more importantly, the agreement protected the rights of any Mexican whose land was now part of the U.S. But when the treaty got sent to Congress, the Senate removed the part that protected the land claims of Mexicans who now lived in America. This would forever change the fate of generations of Mexican Americans to come.
Okay. So, if that's true, if there were leases given to the Mexicans who were in this country when as Grandma Rita would say, when the lines were drawn, and those promises were not kept, that's an issue. I mean, a deal is a deal, Menschlichkeit, right? So that's going to require more looking into, but that is certainly now. But then again, does it play into now? We're talking about something that's like, 175 years ago? They're still arguing over Israel, which was 77 years ago. 3 generations of people have come and gone, and since the 1948 war. By the way, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed in 1848, and the Partition Act that created the state of Israel was 1948. So there you go, exactly 100 years later. Because they both play into each other. The common theme, even the Russia-Ukraine thing. Whose land is it? This is all these disputes are about whose land is it, and it's hard to say. When you buy a house, is it your house? When you conquer a country, is it your country? When you buy half of a country's land, is it your land now? I don't want to go into the morality of it. I got my own opinion, but I'm on the basic premise of this podcast is not for people to bow to my opinions. I do state them from time to time. I want people to think for themselves. And that's one of the big problems I have with a lot of my former communities. They're just in lockstep with each other. They're not thinking for themselves. And I'm sick of the hive minds. So let's not have a hive mind about this. Let's think for ourselves. Let's dive down into the whole thing, the cause and effect of what's happening right now. And I like to think we could all hope that somehow the violence stops. I mean, they kicked in the window of a sushi bar and looted this. Who loots a sushi bar? I'll let that marinate for a second. I don't even know what to say after that. Anyway, they do seem to handle things a little bit differently in Florida than they do in Southern California.
So in Florida, what is our policy if they're going to take over? Just, it's not about throwing rocks, let's say, which obviously they'd be arrested, over an overpass or something like that. But if they're going to take over a street without a permit or something like that, are these people immediately going to be arrested? Like what is actually our policy the second they step over that line, as blurry as they want it to be?
Well, the Hamas demonstrations, when that was in vogue, they tried to do that in the city of Miami, and the Miami PD got them off the street in 13 minutes. They tried to do it in Central Florida on a state road, and our state highway patrol, they were able to dispatch them in 11 minutes. And so, yes, there is zero tolerance. You have no right to commandeer streets. And first of all, it's just wrong. Second of all, that has huge impacts on people's quality of life. You may have a parent needing to go pick up a child from daycare, or from a camp, or from school. You may have somebody has a medical issue they need to get. And what, you're going to clog all the roads? So we have an absolutely zero tolerance policy for that. And we also have a policy that if you're driving on one of those streets and a mob comes and surrounds your vehicle and threatens you, you have a right to flee for your safety. And so if you drive off and you hit one of these people, that's their fault for impinging on you. You don't have to sit there and just be a sitting duck and let the mob grab you out of your car and drag you through the streets.
Remember the LA riots, the LA riots that happened after the Rodney King thing? Reginald Denny, remember Reginald Denny? He was just driving along at Florence and Normandy in South Central LA, minding his own business in a delivery truck. And I'm kind of partial to people who drive delivery trucks, of course. And he was dragged from his vehicle, and he had stones dropped on his head. I mean, he ended up, he's never been the same. They really, really messed him up. Too bad Reginald Denny didn't see Ron DeSantis' video before the crowd attacked him. But yeah, if you're being attacked by a mob, if they're banging on your windows and maybe brandishing objects that could break your windshield, etc., I mean, you're not going to make it. You're already in trouble, So I don't like seeing people get hurt. But if there's a mob trying to kill me, collateral damage might happen. Sorry, it's just not cool. It's not cool surrounding cars and dragging drivers out of cars. I don't think there was much of that, if any of that, this time around in LA. But they did shut down the busiest highway in the country is the Hollywood Freeway, and they shut it down, and they shut down some streets.
What about my kids? Look at this. That's what happens to my kids. I can't help it. But you can if you could just move out the way. You're not going to. How is this a peaceful protest if there's nothing to do? No, it's not.
How do you as white people feel about stopping a black woman from going to work?
Oh no, not work. I care so much.
So you don't care about stopping black people from going to work?
Look at this line that you guys are causing. I'm not causing no problems. I'm not trying to. We're just trying to leave.
There's a very much genius. I wonder if he really knows where he is or what he's even protesting. I mean, yeah, that woman had to get to work. She wasn't hurting anybody. She wasn't messing with anybody. Simple. Let her go to work. How are people? So again, the line's been crossed multiple times, and I know people are clutching their pearls about it, but something has to be done. What if nothing's done? Again, look no further than Tim Walz's Minnesota in 2020 and what happened to the city of Minneapolis, because our almost vice president, let that marinate for a second. We could have had Tim Walz as the vice president. And it kind of, and again, I'm all over the place. I can't help this. There's so much going on. And Israel bombed Iran. I mean, none of this might matter tomorrow if Israel bombing Iran means what it might. I can understand people are sympathetic to people who are scared about getting rounded up by ICE. I'm not going to be all moralistic and judgmental and say things like they should have gotten legal years ago or whatever, but a lot of people do feel that way. A lot of people feel that the very act of crossing the border without permission is a crime. I try to present theory is theory or hearsay is hearsay, fact is fact. This is what I read, is that although Obama deported millions more than Trump, the percentage of criminals that Obama deported was 91%. The percentage of criminals that Trump supposedly is deporting is 41%. And I could see where that can make a difference in the eyes of some, and I could see where that makes no difference whatsoever in the eyes of others. And I'm not trying to be wishy-washy. There's a thin line between respectful and wishy-washy. And I have a lot of respect for my extended family and my coworkers. So there we are. But then again, they're all here legally. so there's that. But we don't talk about it at work. Anyway, changing topics. There's this guy, and he's the father of one of the worst people on the internet. I call him Mini-Me. He is the Mini-Me to Max Blumenthal's Dr. Evil. His name is Aaron Mate. And he's got a dad, and his dad presents himself as Holocaust survivor Dr. Gabor Mate. Now, Dr. Gabor Mate, I don't doubt the doctor part, but I want to give a little caveat to the Holocaust survivor part. He was born in Hungary in 1944. He never saw the inside of a camp. Some things might have happened to his family. I'm not sure about that. And if they did, that's horrible. But he was too young to know anything was going on. The war was over before he could even talk. So having Holocaust survivor as his moniker is just really, really misleading. And he does that to say, well, I'm a Jew, I'm a Holocaust survivor, and I'm against Israel. And it doesn't fly. It sure as hell doesn't fly with me. So to his credit, in the clip I'm about to play, he actually modifies it a little bit. I think he says infant Holocaust survivor. But nevertheless, it's misleading. You don't notice infant. I noticed it. But, he wants you to know, just how smart he is about the Holocaust, because after all, he was there. He was 1 year old during all that. So let's, do I have it up? Yes, I do. Let's hear from Holocaust survivor. But again, he'll say infant, which I appreciate.
Hi, my name is Gabor Mate. This is a message for the crew and travelers amongst the boat, the Madeline. People, I'm Jewish. I'm an infant survivor of the Holocaust. I'm in Poland right now, where I just visited the monument to the brave fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, a small group of people who took on the greatest military in the world, knowing that they can't possibly win, but they fought courageously. Today, you represent those fighters. Today, you represent that small group that's willing to stand up against one of the most murderous military.
I can't listen to another word this guy says. Are you fucking kidding me? This is too much even for me. It really is. He just compared the selfie flotilla with Greta Thunberg and her merry mates to the Warsaw Ghetto resistance. Are you fucking kidding me? Sorry, I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. I'm going to talk about the issue with, the immigration Mexican respectfully. I have no respect for that motherfucker, for Gabor Mate, or his son's boss, oh God, wow. I mean, that's a priceless video. So, what was happening, right? These people got on a ship or yacht or whatever, and they were gonna break the blockade and deliver aid to Gaza personally. I saw some drones at one point to go. They're like, "Oh, we see," it was all like very dramatic. There's video after video after video of what's been going on, and then, of course, they were intercepted by the IDF. Let's just hear a little bit about that.
Globally, the anti-Israel protests continue, with world attention focusing over the past few days on the so-called aid flotilla heading towards Gaza, with professional protester Greta Thunberg on board.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
Oh my God, Greta was kidnapped. How could the world let something like that happen? Well, the Blathering Boomer has a photo of her captivity. And let's see what happened to poor Greta in the hands of the savage Israelis. And there she is. Oh my God, they gave her a sandwich. Oh, poor girl. Oh, Greta. You know, and hey, I'll admit that when she went in front of the UN with the "How dare you" thing, I thought that was pretty cool at the time. It was some years ago. She was, you know, she was a not necessarily cute, but she definitely was able to encourage sympathy when she was a teenager, talking in front of the UN about climate change. Well, apparently she's abandoned the climate. The climate no longer matters to her. All that matters to her is Hamas. So there she is, being mistreated by Israel, and side by side in the same Twitter post are a couple of guests of Hamas who were treated much better than Greta were. So I guess that's what a phony kidnapping looks like, and that's what a real kidnapping looks like. So thank you, Greta, for enlightening us. Yeah. So there's an issue. I don't care who disagrees with me, and I'll talk about that as well. But you know, and again, I talk about how the U.S. purchased California from Mexico at the end of the war. Yes, it sounds like it was real gangster stuff too. I started the story before. We sent an emissary there with a $25 million offer to make the purchase, and there was so much anti-USA sentiment in the government of Mexico that no Mexican politician dared to meet with the U.S. emissary to even consider the offer. So if you remember the scene from The Godfather where Michael is talking to Kate about Johnny Fontaine and the band leader, and how Johnny Fontaine had a contract that he couldn't get out of, and the Godfather had his father, Don Corleone, made an offer to the band leader to get him out of the contract, and the band leader refused. And then a couple of days later, the band leader signed the deal for a fraction of the original offer. That's kind of what happened in the Mexican War. The Mexicans wouldn't even talk to the American emissary. The Americans were extremely imperialistic. The Manifest Destiny was in full bore. James Knox Polk, as the president, was committed to having the United States go all the way to the Pacific Ocean, and they created a border incident. From every bit of information I have, the United States definitely started that war. And then in the end, they weren't offering $25 million anymore. They ended up offering $15 million, and we know the rest, and it leads to where we are now. So you know, again, it wasn't cool to renege on the land lease agreements. You know, that should have been honored. A bad look. Yeah, the entire war was a bad look, but reneging on the agreement that was part of the treaty is a really bad look. But who owns California? You know, was it legally purchased, and was it morally purchased? And is any, you know, you can get to the entire concept of ownership of property. You know, the same John Lennon says, "Imagine no possessions." Well, I'm sorry, call me corrupt, but I like my house. I like my roof. I like being able to lock my door. And a lot of people, I don't want to say you people, but I will. A lot of you people who support open borders, why are you locking your door? You know, if anybody wants to tell me that it's not hypocritical to lock your door while loudly supporting open borders, send me a message on Twitter. I want to hear from you. UNG714, ugly nasty guy 714. I'm going to be a little bit uglier after July 3rd. They're gonna do a bunch of slicing here. It looks like I'm gonna need reconstructive surgery. So yeah, we might not agree on Israel. We might not agree on Hamas. We might not agree on Greta. Well, I hope we agree on Greta. Oh my God, performance with zero substance. But I think we all agree, fuck cancer. Fuck all diseases, and fuck the pharmaceutical companies that say call your prescriber, not call your doctor, call your prescriber. Is that where we are? Is that how people view this? Is that what the purpose is? Is the prescription pad the entirety of the medical industry these days? I mean, of course, that's hyperbolic, but call your prescriber. That really bothered me. And so, yeah, I said it enough times on this. Do I have one more thing? I think I might. Oh, yeah. This is probably the smallest story of the week, but I just want to point this one out because I actually heard the most idiotic 2-word phrase I've ever heard, and that's saying a lot. Okay, top 10 anyway. Top 10. So Riley Gaines, I'm sure a lot of you know who Riley Gaines is. If you don't, Riley Gaines is the person who lost to William Thomas, who calls himself Leah Thomas, swimming for the University of Pennsylvania. She came in second. He came in first. Kate says she wishes I wouldn't have gone after Gabor Mate. That was low and not becoming of me. I respectfully disagree. I wish he wouldn't use the moniker Holocaust survivor. And he went, Kate, to get all due respect, because you've been following me for a long time, and I really appreciate that. But I couldn't handle that he's conflating the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising with the Freedom Flotilla. It just I can't abide it. And again, I hope it doesn't make you stop watching, because you've been a loyal watcher for quite a while, pretty much since the beginning. So very respectfully disagree with your comments. Anyway, Riley Gaines became very outspoken after she was beaten by a biological male in a swim meet. And Simone Riles, who I believe is a former Olympic gymnastic champion, came after Riley Gaines and got very personal. It went back and forth. Ultimately, it looked pretty bad for Simone. So she came out with an apology, and the apology said, among other things, I've always believed competitive equity and inclusivity are both essential in sports. The current system doesn't adequately balance these important principles, which often leads to frustration and heated exchanges. That was part of her publicist. But anyway, there's 2 words in there that follow each other. Competitive equity. Think about that for a second. Competitive equity. How can you have competitive equity? Competition in and of itself means that there's going to be winners and losers. You can't have competitive equity. It doesn't make any sense. So I had to point that one out. Oh boy. So I'm sure I've gotten some hell yes. I'm sure I've gotten some fuck yous. If so, I've done my job. 22 people watching. I appreciate all of you. You're the only 22 people who are going to see what's been going on for the last hour. I'm going to definitely have to do some editing, because again, I'm not sure if I went too far. Although I'm not. Well, I'll revisit what I said about Gabor Mate, but I am not a fan of that entire gray zone cabal. Anyway, that's really all I got for now. Let's really hope. I'm gonna pause for a couple seconds so everybody can get their God forbids in. But if there's war with Iran, I don't know what a positive outcome looks like. But if there is one, let's hope for it. This has been a very, very tough week. Very, very tough week in the Blatherverse. So I'm ending on a quiet note, and the boomer is blathered.